NuWave Community Media.
Before we start, a note to our listeners. The content of this podcast is based on our opinions and experiences. While NuWave Community Media strives to offer valuable insights and information, we are not medical or professional advisors. Any advice or suggestions presented here should not be considered a substitute for seeking guidance from qualified professionals. We encourage you to consult with appropriate experts regarding any specific concerns or issues you may have. Thanks for tuning in. Enjoy the podcast. Nothing in life is to be feared. It is only to be understood. Now is the time to understand more so that we may fear less. Marie Curie, physicist and chemist, 1867 to 1934. From NuWave Community Media in Oakland, California, I'm Jen K. Ward, and this is the Digital Sanity Podcast. Welcome to episode 1. Thank you for cutting the opening day ribbon with me. My guests today are the founders of NuWave Community Media, our Chief Executive Officer, Julian Breed, and our Chief Marketing Officer, Ricardo Vasquez, and, well, me, your excited, intrepid host and part-time nervous wreck. So what is this podcast all about? Well, it's about being online without losing your mind. Need I say more? Well, sure, why not? How do we help you specifically? Okay, you'll get insights from technologists, aka technology creators, mental health professionals, artists, everyday heroes. In short, just about everybody, and parents you included too. The conversation doesn't end here. So in other words, we won't leave you hanging. We provide follow-up resources on our website after each episode for those who want to dive even deeper. If you find some of what you hear upsetting or challenging, well, you'll also find information on qualified helpers, professionals, and organizations that can help. When I was doing research for episodes, I was floored by how deeply and widely tech is part of our lives, and in ways I never would have imagined. Kind of scary. Oh, wait. Strike that. Reverse it, as Willy Wonka would say. Terrifying. But things are starting to change. I mean, people recognize the pitfalls it affects on their mental health and their emotional health, how it can bring us together, well, and also divide and conquer us, and entire societies, for that matter. And, well, just because social media is called social media doesn't mean it's pro-society or even pro-social. So think about the term more deeply, and you start realizing this, and that words have power. This is a problem that's hiding in plain sight, and most of our eyes are pinned to it on the hourly and daily. So to open this first show, I want to talk about various things. For example, how COVID and not seeing people in 3D made me feel isolated and hermetic. Now, to the show at hand. I'm going to dive in with Julian and Ricardo. And here we go, guys. Are you ready?
Yep, ready to go.
Are you excited?
I am.
Are you afraid? Are you afraid?
Always.
Always. So before we go any further, why don't you tell everyone, why did you start the NuWave community? In fact, what is the NuWave community?
I think one, it was the fact that I wanted to build a sense of community. I wanted to be able to interact with people with like minds. I wanted to I wanted a place where you felt that people were empowering each other. And unfortunately, my last job was not that. And so I wanted to create a place that I felt that I can do work and that I can do great work in something that I love and that I'm passionate about. And that's where we ended up with a business called Embark Media, in which we were hosting about 4 podcasts. And there we just began to see that there was a need in various other areas, and how, because of COVID, it was all after COVID, the fact that we can do more for the community, and NuWave started to spur from that initial idea.
Mm-hmm. So if I go to the NuWave Community Media website, which is newwavemedia.org, what do I take away from that? How can I get involved? Why should I get involved? What do I get out of it? What will I learn? What are the opportunities for me to create change, positive change?
What you can find in our website is community for every target demographic. So if you're a parent, senior, various stages in your student journey, we have a little bit of information. And just like social media, right, we're trying to stay up with all the changes. So there you would find connection. But besides that, you also find resources in mental health, different type of skills that you could apply. You would find all our great podcasts like Digital Sanity, in which you can see the different various communities that exist within NuWave. And you basically find just a community that supports each other.
Can you be a little more specific, Ricardo? Because, for example, will I learn how to do a podcast? When I volunteer, what kind of role can I have? Like, what are the roles available? What can they only find with NuWave Community Media that they can't find anywhere else?
So what you would find, one that I didn't mention, is the fact our various programs, right? So we have the student program in which you would get educated. We will have modules in which they can educate themselves about digital literacy, safety, and well-being, right? So we'll have it, and for various different stages, for different, for students in high school, college, middle school. The other part is the fact that we have also developed an internship program where we currently have students who are actively engaging in different parts of NuWave. What I like about that is the fact that I get to engage with the student, find their strengths, and find kind of like their direction that they kind of want to venture to. Some of them are getting ready to go to college. Some have already gone to college. And we try to place them that next step in order to get them to the next part. So it may be a career marketing. That might be that some people are supporting with the social media strategy. If it's branding, people are helping us with creating great Canva images for our posts, or maybe postings for the other podcasts. We also have various people around the world. It's not just Bay Area, where people like to tell stories. So they want to be part of something. They've joined up alongside existing podcasts that are actively recording and producing episodes, and they get to edit media.
That actually goes hand in hand with our volunteer program. Like he mentioned, we like to let people get involved into the activities that we do, helping produce these podcasts. We want to make sure that the people signing up, whether it's intern, volunteers, and eventually the future employees, we want to make sure that they're also achieving their goals. A lot of people come in and volunteer, and with any other nonprofit, they think, okay, I'm just going to be folding pamphlets or, sitting at a front desk. We take pride in the fact that the positions we have for volunteering are actually positions that will help develop your skills and allow you to go into the workforce with some type of knowledge in that area. We have different, volunteer opportunities, from production, helping to edit, producing podcasts. We have various volunteer opportunities for production, helping edit, script writing, those type of creative activities. We have people who want to join our grant department. that because they want to learn how to develop grants, develop budgets. We have people that want to go into the marketing or Ricardo side, where they're learning about social media, they're learning about advertising, they're learning about the different ways that you market to the different social media platforms. So we take pride in the fact that we're not just having people do like paperwork and, bureaucratic stuff. We like the fact that anything that anyone is doing is helping them achieve their goal as well.
Exactly. Oh, you want to add to that?
Let me add to that. Yeah. The other side too is that we have a remote model. A lot of companies and business are still used to you must come to an actual physical location. So what we're doing is being able to have a different way of communicating, building community where we can all engage, and normalizing the fact that the direction that we're going is that remote project-based model. And that you could be successful without feeling weird, right? That you're not in front of your computer for 6-7 hours straight. So we're in a way empowering our community to normalize that side, and as well empowering other nonprofits, connecting with other nonprofits, showing them what type of model we're kind of adapting to our organization, and how we're being able to retain a lot of the volunteers, the difference from a volunteer and a committed volunteer, and why that change is happening. And so I know that we're talking about many different areas, but they all go hand in hand, because once you start to empower the volunteer, then the ball begins to roll. And one thing that we all have in common is the fact that we want to be able to be heard, have a voice, a presence, a great community that supports each other. And why not do it while you're producing great content and being creative, right? And having and really also taking in mind our mental well-being.
Yes, and the mental well-being component is really is it the crux of all of this? In a way, because empowerment is well-being. So I think that the whole thing is sort of embraced by well-being, if you will, or well-being embraces everything that happens within.
It is, because the thing is that at the end of the day, a lot of employers, when they look at people when they come into work, they want them to produce for that bottom line. And if you're mentally not well that morning, then yes, you can produce, but are you producing at your best of your capability, or will you be able to give great work output? Maybe not, because you're having challenging times, right? And I know people want to say, keep family and friends separate from work, but it really does not work that way. It's easy to.
It's nearly impossible to do, especially when you have the standard 9 to 5. It's hard to live your life around those hours.
And not only that, they say that you spend more of your life working than living at home. So when it comes to that, there really, just to say it and not be able to give the resources, how do you make that happen? That's because it does not exist. So for us is the fact that the first thing besides giving you a role or a project is understanding the fact that well-being comes first. Because if we are conscious that certain days you're going to be good and certain days you might not feel well, then we also know that this project will start, kind of figuring out how this project will evolve, setting deadline and expectations, but at the end caring for that person. That person will then take more ownership and feel committed to get something done. They might work extra hours. Some people, like for me, who suffer from ADHD, I shine better at nighttime. So that does mean that I'll probably be working till 2 a.m. So that means that person, if they're not feeling well during the morning, they'll probably give me a better output during nighttime, and that works best for them, right? So it just it goes about looking at people's well-being, taking it into consideration, so that we can have a great nonprofit to help the community.
I think your timing is perfect. I know for myself that COVID and the quarantine, changed me very much as a person. And I know this is true for just about everybody I talk to. I've been a freelancer most of my career. So working from home was normal or is normal for me. But I never felt more isolated. And I have emerged from this whole thing a very different person. And I would have to say, in some ways more resilient, and in a lot of ways wounded by it.
Yeah.
And, you know, for want of a better expression, I like to say that so many of us had a come to Jesus moment. In what do I believe? Am I contributing to something that's positive or negative? Maybe work is different than a job. I think it's great that we all want to move forward with meaning and with compassion. And it's so interesting because I started a business during COVID with someone that I met online through a community, an online community. And this woman and I met, and it wasn't, why don't you guys get a room? It was, why don't you guys get an office? And we started this wonderful business called the Women's Launch Table, which helps, fledgling women entrepreneurs specifically create businesses from idea to launch. And I may talk about that later in the podcast. Maybe have my partner come in for an episode. We could talk about that more. But that kept me going. That kept me going during COVID because I have autoimmune issues and I really had to lock up and be alone. And it was insane. It really felt insane. And so coming out of it, I do need to supplement with other work. And I thought, but first and foremost, I need to be less of a hermit now. Before COVID, I was a mega extrovert, right? And now you told me this term. What is it? Ambivert?
Omnivert.
Is that omnivert? Yeah, where I'm now a rabid extrovert still, but I also need my downtime and alone time.
It's funny that you brought that up. Me and my friend, we go on like a little walk every morning, and we were actually talking about how, people don't realize, but the difference between everything before 2020 and everything after 2020, the world shifted. It was kind of similar to 9/11. The world shifted, and although we're going back to somewhat normality, it'll never be the same again. And the good thing about COVID, if you can take any good out of it, is it did switch the mentality of people. It did make people realize what they're worth. I know for my own job, I stepped down because I do have my own mental well-being that I have to keep track of. And I was willing to take that sacrifice because I knew at the job I had, essentially I knew I was worth more. And I was willing to take that sacrifice. And I feel like a lot of people in this age now are trying to find their worth and take sacrifices to be happy, especially in a chaotic world like we live in now.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, during COVID, sacrifices, they were literally, we didn't necessarily choose the sacrifices that we made. The COVID forced them. For example, if you're a woman who worked outside of the home, but suddenly you couldn't go into work, what are you going to do? What are you going to do about your income? And what are you going to do about childcare? And, just kind of open people's eyes to, is this system as it has been, going to work for me? Can I survive within this old model? I don't think so. And what's really interesting, just one thing I learned doing research for the Women's Launch Table is that during COVID, the numbers of women who became entrepreneurs just was off the charts. And in particular, for African-American and Latina women. So that kind of tells you something about the economic impacts of that as well. That makes sense? Yeah. And so, in transitioning from being, basically a hermit to trying to, find a life outside again and working with other people again, I thought maybe I would do well to find a group for which I could volunteer, because that's going to put me in connection with people again. And so fortunately, the internet helped provide a solution. There's a site called Volunteer Match. It came up right away, of course, when I was like, volunteer opportunities in the East Bay. And so it had these fields and little, you wrote, you didn't just check boxes about what's meaningful to you, what your skills are. Immediately, you guys came up. And I thought, this is cool. I went to your website, and we eventually had lunch outdoors here in Alameda, and it was terrific. And, I'm so grateful that on many levels that you guys are doing this. And actually that there was a platform through which I could find you, and it would be such a good fit.
Yeah. It's funny because of the fact that before we found Volunteer Match, we were trying really hard to find volunteers to help us out. And Volunteer Match was the godsend, to be honest with you, because we now have you and all these other lovely volunteers that are on board helping us out.
So that's an example of how technology helps.
Yeah.
And helps create community. And I feel like it's a very healthy one.
It is.
Yeah.
I wanted to add to I know everyone talk about like COVID, and the same thing happened where during COVID it was it was that line that you draw of what you will no longer accept into your life and what you think you will accept. It was very so you were pushed to make that distinction already, even if you're not ready, right? And the not accepting was, I need a new job. This is not working out. And right. And this COVID, you're already going, for some of us, right, might not have suffer as bad with maybe traumas, depression, anxiety. So some of us went into COVID with existing trauma, depression, which threw us even worse because isolation, everything you don't figure this out until you're trying to get back into everything, right? Versus other people were starting to experience it for the first time, these feelings that they've never experienced, right? And so in a way, COVID was a blessing in disguise where I was kind of happy that people were experiencing and understanding what I've been going through since the age of 2 or since I can remember, right? I've always had to carry this. And it made me feel less alone because there was a lot more every time I would speak with someone, it was always about mental health. It didn't happen. I mean, it happened through the process was the fact that everyone started to just feel more alone, more secluded. Life wasn't going the right direction. And that people were just scrolling on their apps, just getting lost like zombies. And I fell into the trap too, where we normally don't say, "Hi, my name's Ricardo. I'm addicted," right, to something. But yes, I'm addicted to social media because I find myself sometimes scrolling, or I go onto social media for a purpose, and completely forget the purpose because something else caught my attention. And social media has gave me a new purpose or a new thing that I must do, right? And so with that was when we were like, okay, we love media, we love recording episodes, telling stories. I have a background of, I graduated with business administration with concentration in marketing management. So I've always had that eye for marketing and event, while Julian loves media and telling stories and editing. And we're like, you know what, let's put all of this together. I don't know what this means, but let's put this together. And that's what created NuWave in the fact that we were doing something creative and fun. And we began to empower ourselves, right? Not knowing that just because we're kind of down to earth and humble in nature, that we're empowering others. People were looking at us as resources to help them climb up the ladder of whatever goals that they had. And that so happened that, like, you know what, there's more work to be done. And we put this information out on volunteermatch.com. And that's where we ended up finding Jen. And we just clicked since day one. it's weird how if people believe in the law of attraction, like I do, and then you kind of don't, depending on what day you catch me, right? But once we started to open this door, once we start putting ourselves in this journey, you don't know the amount of people from like a senior writer for CNN, authors of books, people who are influencers. You have a background too, Jen, being I don't want to say where you worked in the past. I'll let you do that in future episodes. But you have the background, actors, and every single person's lived experience has something of connection of where I'm learning and taking it in, and just that just propelled me, because people are counting on me to have this community, whatever it may look. We have a podcast that's directed for Hispanic women. Anyone can listen to it, but it's for Hispanic women. Hijas, Madres y Amigas podcast. And now people are talking about suicide prevention, being a mother for the first time, depression in the Latina culture. That's one world. Everything But Perfect podcast. They're talking about relationships. What does it look like being together for 17 years? Why has it worked? Why do I only I want no child or one child only? These conversations, all of this, I'm learning from everyone at the same time that they're learning from me. And these are just stories. Then everyone comes with their own education of background. And I'm learning from that, from editing to, for you, Jen, you have marketing and branding expertise. And it just seemed like it all fell in line. And it continues. Only this episode knows what's going to bring to us three.
Mm-hmm. Right. We don't know. And I could say that with this podcast, what I really appreciate is that we are casting a wide net in terms of who will resonate with this podcast. Coming from the branding industry, when I work, it's always to, the wave is to niche things out, right? Go for the niche. And there's all kinds of quantitative and qualitative research that goes into that. You could do it forever. And then, the creating of avatars and everything that goes into it so that you can brand to that specific market. What I love about this is that we're not branding to a specific market necessarily. This is open to everybody. And I want to say, my soapbox, if you will, is an intergenerational focus, because I feel that Madison Avenue and Silicon Valley have done the best they can to divide and conquer. Why is that? Well, when you're not talking to an elder, or an older person is talking to a younger person, you create that agitation that makes you want to engage with something or buy something that is specific to your generation. And it creates an animosity or a deafness between them. And I feel that when the long view and current techniques and people with fresh perspectives come together, well, that's the best possible combination of all. So we're going to be hearing from young people, high school students. We're going to be hearing from people in my age cohort. I'm going to be 63 in June. Everybody. And you guys, you're millennials, right?
Yes.
You're millennials.
I can't remember my age anymore. I think I'm going to be 43 or 44. One of those.
What does it matter right now? But you listeners, you guys are going to be really fascinated by what every group has to say. I'm finding it fascinating. In fact, some of the interviews that we've been doing in advance, I mean, they've been turning into 2-hour conversations and that blow our minds, right? But the reason why I talk about branding so much, and yes, it's because I come from that background. But even before that, I was born to two North Beach beatniks who were actors. They moved to San Francisco from the Midwest, and all bets were off. So they worked with a group of people on something called the Shakespearean Tent Theater. They put a circus tent up at Fisherman's Wharf. Now, this was in the late 50s, very early 60s. San Francisco was a different place then. So they put it up in a parking lot, and they performed Shakespeare. And, I was born in San Francisco and, played with my dad's or my parents' bongo drums, right? And all of that. And was introduced to poetry at an early age, but really introduced to the theater at a very early age and storytelling. My entire childhood, I went to rehearsals. We had one car. So my dad would be either directing something or rehearsing to be in a play. And so words were my life, really, and character. And yes, you had, 3 to 5 acts to tell a story that had a lot of meaning. So words have always been very important to me, and it's no surprise that I became a copywriter later on in my life. I should mention in between then I was an art major and actually morphed that into work as a journalist when I first started out as a writer. I would write about art and antiques for different magazines. Then I got work with high-tech firms because there I was living in Palo Alto and then Menlo Park, the epicenter. So I helped launch major companies and also helped create the driving narrative or story, brand story for, let's see, everybody mentioned these companies pretty much on the daily. Let's just put it that way. And so, I come from that vantage point where I know a lot about technology, not everything. It's changing daily, hourly. So, but at least I have this perspective that started almost from the get-go. My mom was a project manager at Regis McKenna when I was in high school. And that was the first PR firm that took on high tech. So, for example, she would manage photo shoots that would introduce Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. And she'd come home and talk about all of that. And then she later worked for the Hewlett Foundation, which was a nonprofit foundation. So, my family, in addition to living and breathing theater and writing, at least in terms of my mom's influence, tech was a big part of it. And eventually I ended up in the creative services department, started out as a part-time stint as an admin, and then turned into a long relationship with a certain company that was quite beautiful at the time. So, when I was born, look at this. I was born in 1961. That's the year Kennedy and Jackie moved into the... Jack and Jackie Kennedy moved into the White House. Okay? That was... it heralded the golden age of advertising. So think Mad Men. That's how old I am. I've been alive. I've seen, of course, the first personal computer. I've seen the advent of color television, computer games, you name it, paging devices, cell phones, cordless phones. Sony Walkman, Napster, just about, AOL, dot matrix printers, programming in BASIC. You name it, I've seen it. And so hopefully I can bring that long view and express the positive sides of things, but also the cautionary tales, because that's what comes from immersion and experience and a knowledge of the history of it all, to say where we've been, what can we learn from where we've been, but where are we going? And let me tell you, this and that. But it's not just about me and us and our views. We bring people in to talk to us. And the people have been they have been so far. You'll hear these podcasts coming up. But it's men, women, like I said, kids with these incredible ideas about pretty much every form of digital technology. And they just come from all different backgrounds. And at the end of each episode, what's great about this podcast is that you will be directed to resources that can help you inform you. And if you find any of the subject matter that we discuss challenging, you'll find out about qualified professionals, places to look for specific things. We think you're really going to enjoy this, and how I hope listeners will feel is, connection, relief, empowerment, because this isn't just going to focus on what's wrong, the insanity. It's about how do we live with this? Because if you don't look at that, well, what are we going to do? Stay depressed about it? No. And just another thing about myself, I live with depression and anxiety and adult ADHD. So it's a fun cocktail. And this has not been self-diagnosed, by the way. Just want to put that out there because it's easy to try and self-diagnose these days.
Yeah, most definitely.
And people just do it as just regular speak now. Oh, that was so ADHD of me, right?
Yeah.
I too I'm a screen addict, and I need to recover from that. So we're gonna have people on who can help with that. So every episode is intended to help, not just talk about this stuff, but to actually provide concrete solutions, how-tos. And then, it's exclusive information too. We're going to be talking to technologists, the people who create this and know what they're doing. We're going to be talking to people who are trying to, like us, figure out how to coexist, and people who are experts in, for example, AI. People who are here to help take the fear out of it, but also, put out some flares for us.
Yeah, what I like about the fact is that with the various people that are coming on, they're telling us how they engage with the technology, right? What we call software, it's being called apps, right? And when I was asking for volunteers, like, send me your headshots, they call selfies. So the whole the language has changed. But when the thing that I like is the fact that I'm learning about new applications that people are adapting to their own lives to make them easier. Stuff that I would not have used because it's not within my age group. But I look at it like, wait a minute, if I use it this way, it will work, right? Now I'm excited about how I can use AI. One of the ideas that I came up or was talking to you about, Jen, about mental health and AI. I'm excited about that, of how I can adapt that. So yeah, that's what I like of the fact that we're engaging with volunteers. Their story is dependent also how they interact with different types of software, different types of apps for their lifestyle. And then they come on and they share all that, and then we learn, right? Because technology is moving so fast that it's so hard for just one person to stay on top of it. We need to kind of gain all the resources and education from everyone, right?
Exactly. I mean, it's really a bottomless pit. But, let's get out of the pit and have a conversation pit. Now, you may not know what that means, but I was a kid during the 70s, and in suburbia, houses were built that had these carpeted, if you will, little rooms that were down set of stairs, but still part of the living room. They're called conversation pits. And usually there was a really groovy, like mid-century looking fireplace in there. And you could go in there, parents could go in there and talk, basically. Right. But in very groovy ways. But so, this will be a conversation pit that will take us out of the pit.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Right? Ready for a little break? Me too. We'll be right back after this message. Thanks for coming back to the Digital Sanity Podcast. So, NuWave comes out of Oakland, but of course, it's remote as well. Do you have anything to say about being in the Oakland community or coming from there, broadcasting from Oakland? Podcasting, rather?
I feel like it's the perfect spot for the setup we have. The Bay Area is like a melting pot and very liberal, and our community wants us to have a voice. You know, they want us to be able to advocate for the things that our community needs. Yeah, and because that's what the Bay Area has been doing for a long time. Groups like the Black Panthers, other groups that have always wanted to lead the pack in being the voice of the generation, that's what we're trying to do. And the Bay Area is the perfect spot to do that.
And let's not forget that we're like in the backyard of Silicon Valley, right? So LinkedIn, Twitter, Tesla all started I think, here, like around these areas. So, right?
Yeah,
Facebook,
Tesla's factory is in the East Bay.
right?
Yeah, Facebook. Yeah, I mean, I was born in the city and raised in Palo Alto. And then there came Apple. HP was there, Hewlett Packard already. But yeah, Facebook, all of it. We're right here.
Yeah.
We are right in the thick of it. And we see its gains, you know, what it does for our communities and what it does for our communities in a positive way. And we also are right here to see what it does to divide communities. You know, in the process of creating, you know, global online community through social media, you know, pretty much it's the 1% that is taking over here, real estate wise, and pushing people out. But we're holding on. Yeah. I mean, and also Oakland gets a terrible rap, as we know. I mean, there's so much negativity going on in Oakland. That's real.
You know, with Oakland having some challenging times off and on, Oakland gets usually a bad rep, right? But there, with the struggles and challenges also comes a lot of people who know that there's a better life or a better way, right? And it takes community and it takes support and resources. So in a way, you could become resilient to be able to stand up and stand strong and know that, you know, you'll be able to get through it. So even though that, you know, there might be some rough patches, Oakland usually makes you very, very strong, very, very wise, and you get a little bit of everything.
Yeah. Hey, it's like, it's the thing, and Oaklanders are proud of being Oaklanders. That is the for sure thing. And, you know, and I feel like Oakland has always had that up and down pattern, because the last 4 years before last year, it was a booming city, not much crime. Well, it had crime, but not as much as it has now. You know, property got bought up, businesses started coming in. You know, there was a nightlife in Oakland at a certain point. And then now it has gone downward to where we've even been, noticed by Governor Gavin Newsom. He's had to kind of take reign for Oakland because there's just so much going on. So hopefully, like, for the work we do and other nonprofits and other businesses, hopefully at some point we'll be back on that upslope, you know, becoming a major city for change and diversity.
And then, you know, hopefully with the remote model and still moving forward with our message, that we can secure a grant and open a facility that would be here in Oakland, and donations that can help support, right? Help support the cause, and of having a facility where we envision that we would love to have a place where students can go and record, where we would have, you know, studios, green screens, with professionals that can be teaching these kids, teenagers, college students of the inner workings of new media. Be able to have therapists on call or in-house, where just imagine a world where you're having podcasting, you're telling your story, you get triggered, and we're not letting you go. We would have support there to continue,
right?
You know, mental health if you decide that you want to take that resource, right? So we have those events where it's education, help, you know, rather than just doing modules, where we would have live events where you have micro influencers, people from, you know, technology who have built apps and understand the inner workings all in one location. So Julian always compared it that we want to be kind of like the PBS, iHeart. We're somewhat of a hybrid location, and just continue to grow various different hubs, because social media is not going to go anywhere. It's only going to increase.
Yeah.
And
right.
we need to be in communities to be able to provide that. So Oakland would be somewhat of our, test, research, and fine tune, and then to open another NuWave location somewhere else. So that's what we envision.
And it's like, what's the best place to do it other than Silicon Valley itself than Oakland? It's like, we need on the entire Bay Area needs to be the one that are up on the digital technology education, because the Bay Area is the founder of most of this stuff.
Oh yeah,
so it's like all places. Oakland is a good start because it's one of the homes of technology as well.
But besides the support of grants, donations, we're very thankful. That's one thing I want to mention. We're very thankful for the volunteers that are currently active in NuWave. What I love the fact about this is that many of the volunteers have taken roles and have made them their own. And everyone respectfully feel like they're overstepping. But no, I respect it because I see the passion. It's like, it's not us. We're strategizing. I know we're moving a lot of areas, but the fact that the volunteers currently are really excited and understand the need that is not being fulfilled. There is other companies, they're doing it a different way, right? Mm-hmm. And for us is the fact that we're using podcasting as a form of bringing community together. We're using podcasting like bibliotherapy, which is a form of therapy. We are using podcasting as therapy because many of the hosts and many of the people who have been on podcasts have been able to find themselves a little, been able to ask further questions or reflect on things that they could have done different, or inspire them to go a different route, because we're there for support. So it's become a therapy, community, education, safety. That's why we feel like why we stand out, why we are different, because not only are we teaching it, but we're applying it.
Right. That's the perfect way of putting it. And just to say, I feel very empowered by being able to host the Digital Sanity Podcast and work with you guys. And it has not been a stress at all, because you're not only very supportive, in terms of me learning the ropes, but also in terms of the way my timing, it is volunteer. And like we've talked about before, sometimes certain days aren't that great, and so we're not necessarily beholden to, drop dead schedules. Not really. I mean, I feel like you guys will always prioritize people's lives and wellness.
Even dispute that. There are a lot of nonprofits that are still acting as corporations, to where the volunteers and nothing, they're just numbers, and that's what we are trying to break. It makes no sense. I've been in jobs where it's just like, well, all my work is done, but my boss is expecting me to stay around for 8 hours. It makes no sense. Just give me a project. I'll work on it and get it done before the deadline. If you're doing your work, there's no need to live by the 9 to 5. We're trying to set that model, because when you have the model of we need you to be here all the time, they're trying to control you. There's no leadership. There's just dictation, and the best companies that thrive are the ones that actually listen to their employees and actually take into consideration their mindfulness. The reason why we set up this way is because we've seen people who have kids and they need to work around their jobs to pick up their children. People with mental health conditions, like me, for example, with anxiety. There are certain days I can't deal with it. The model we have set up right now is beneficial for people who still need to live life and take care of their mental health as well. What kind of company would we be if we're telling people to honor their mental health and we don't do that with ourselves or the people who are helping us out?
Yep. Well put. Get this. Globally, around 11% of the population are estimated to have a mental health disorder. And these factors can include social stigma and limited healthcare access. And the cost could be prohibitive for people who have mental issues. It keeps them from receiving support. But here we go. Wellness apps are offering another route, right, to self-help. And here's the interesting thing. And so at the beginning of the pandemic, downloads of Calm and Headspace, those two apps, shot up. And of course, with it, their revenue, right? Everybody was anxious and stressed out. Well, not everybody, but a lot of people. And there was we were all facing this worldwide uncertainty and also restricted access in person to conventional mental health and well-being support. So people turned to these apps. And you get this number. All right. Wellness apps generated $950 million in revenue in 2023. Now, that was a slump of 7.7% of the previous year. North America was responsible for $355 million of that revenue. The meditation app Calm generated $300 million in revenue in 2023. Over 50 million people used wellness apps in 2023. There were 129 million wellness apps installed in 2023 and a decrease of 4 million on the year prior. So I'm wondering if anxieties over AI will bring those numbers back up. But those are pretty wild statistics. And also I wanted to, and by the way, where did I get those statistics? So there's a website. It's a really interesting website called Business of Apps. I really encourage people to visit that. Business of Apps. It's astounding what you will learn about every facet of apps, every facet, and the stats and the finances behind all of that. It's really eye-opening. So 1 in 3 women and 1 in 5 men will experience major depression in their lives, and conditions like schizophrenia or bipolar disorder are less common, but they still have an impact on people's lives. How do we kind of migrate back to the world of 3D? I'm not knocking online therapy at all, believe me. But there's something about that in-person experience that you can't get that way. I mean, you're not sharing the same molecules in the room. It's just a whole different experience. It's a live, in-person 3D experience. And I would love to have a guest on here who can talk about that, a therapist. I think that would be really interesting, don't you guys?
Yeah, to have, professional, like say professional help. You need professional help, but it's always good to get their take, right? Because they're getting to see what is the common thread that keeps resurfacing, right? It's always going to be social media, how it plays in people's lives, right? How you get lost in it in that web of just media.
It's really interesting, isn't it? We prior to this episode, we spoke with people of various ages about their, experience with technology, digital technology, and also their social media use and their opinions and their ideas about the future. And we'll play some of those clips for you because they yielded answers that surprised me and surprised in a lot of different ways. One surprise was hearing a couple of young women who are part of Gen Z talk about how they use the social apps less and less and less, and how they've become very, very, basically done with disingenuous advertising in the form of social media posts. So we'll let these folks speak for themselves about their use and about how they really experience the world in 3D these days, and also their experiences with technology that exists in 3 dimensions, such as food delivery robots. You'll enjoy this, folks.
It's like, so I have friends who make content for like big beauty brands for TikTok and things like that, and their ads on TikTok perform the lowest compared to their ads on like Facebook or other sites, because like younger generations who use TikTok hate that user generated like ads that look like users are doing them. You know what I mean? Like they hate that kind of like user generated ads because they just feel like they're being like sold to and lied to. Whereas like older generations on Facebook like eat that shit up. And it's harder for brands to market to younger people through TikTok because it's so oversaturated with ads that it just like turns people off of it completely. So I think like the more people try to market to people through like social media and stuff like that, the more it's just going to like turn people away from it. I think brands are going to have to get smarter about how they market to the younger generations because it's like not as easy anymore. Like I think social media is how we find out about like mutual aid. Like if somebody needs something, like that's a good way to reach out. Like that's how Clio found her roommate. You know what I mean? Like it's a good way to connect people like looking for housing or like demonstrations, like protests, or even work. Like you can even find work through social media like easily too. I think in some ways it can be supportive because like, for example, like especially in like the early ages of the internet, but still now, like it was like a place for like queer people to meet other queer people who aren't necessarily out in their like public communities, or like, you know what I mean? Like I think in that sense, or like, you know what I mean, instances like that, are people who are experiencing like things that no one else in their like 3D community is experiencing. It was like a good way for people to connect or like share tips or information, or I don't know, just talk, like dialogue. But when I think about the dark sides of it, I think of like eating disorder TikTok, or not TikTok, like Tumblr and Twitter, where like people would post like thinspo, like people who look like super thin, like as their inspiration to like not eat and things like that, or like tips on like if you only eat this many carrots a day, like you won't pass out, but you'll like not intake any calories, like things like that. Like I think that stuff can be really detrimental. Clio, my sister, like submitted this video because she works on Hollywood Boulevard, and there was like a food delivery robot, and this houseless woman was like riding on it down the street naked, and it had food in it, like, and it was on its way to somebody, and then like they had to like contact like the people in charge of it, like the person who was getting the food, like the lady showed up with the food to the place that was getting delivered, and then they had to contact a person. So even if it's not a person delivering the food, somebody's gonna have to kick the lady off the robot.
There are a lot of like social pressures within the like all the platforms, like for Instagram, like you have to look a certain way too, and then like they like judge you based off of it. It's mainly on girls and guys. They like, I have guy friends too, and they tell me, and they're like, "Oh, I don't think you guys like get judged more." And I was thinking about it, and I'm like, no, I think we get judged way more than you, actually. And, like, they have pressures on them. They have insecurities, but I think we're, like, forced to have way more. When I don't feel well, I think I do engage with them more because I feel like, for me, I feel like it's, like, a safe place where, like, you can, like, laugh or, like, you can just do, like, anything. But, like, sometimes, like, it'll make you feel worse. But that hasn't happened to me. But, like, sometimes it'll just make you feel so, like, insecure. But, like, that I feel like I laugh more than feel more insecure than on the platform.
The way social media was before, when people or programmers and, like, people inventing these apps were more so just interested in connecting people, when that was still their mission statement, that's when it felt like it. But as they're growing companies and they need to do more and they want those numbers, like, they let it fall into what it is. You know, and so I think, yeah, there does need to be more education for everybody, because I think they need to be able to reflect on the fact that it's not that, oh, it's an us versus them. There's a whole group of people you need to argue with and that won't understand you and you don't understand. It's people who are making money off of you not understanding and forcing you into situations. People can pick up when somebody's being fake, so a lot of people on TikTok are more hypercritical of people's personalities because they're trying to, it's just second nature now to just try and dissect what's going on with somebody's personality. Is it fake? Are they real? Do I like who they are? Because, hey, you're putting a video, putting yourself out there. I have freedom to critique it as much as I want. When it's like, hey, maybe I wasn't posting to be seen. Maybe I was just posting because I thought it was funny. And I thought this was still supposed to be like Vine where I can post something funny and wholesome.
Thanks for being here today. And I want you to know that this isn't just about conversations. It's about actual tools that you can use. So as we're interviewing our guests, you're going to take away a lot of good stuff, and so are we. And pretty much the focus is going to be about how to set boundaries, how to stay balanced, stay safe, be mindful, also as a part of staying safe and balanced, right? And just, I'll tell you, the big takeaways really, I think, are here you have a touchstone podcast that is something of a refuge from all the overwhelm and kind of counterintuitively, a refuge from all the noise. You're going to learn new and positive ways to engage with technology. And our goal is that by the end of each episode, you're going to feel more relaxed, hopefully inspired and empowered. And that's our vision for you. That's my vision for you. And that's the vision of everyone we're going to be bringing on. And again, from all facets of life, technologists, parents, educators, hackers, you name it. We're going to hear it all, but it's all in service of digital literacy and wellness. Thanks for joining us. Come back next month for our interview with Kate Ginnivan, an AI maven, entrepreneur, and educator. Find out how you can be the master of AI. She'll take the fear out of it for you. If you're interested in volunteering or being a student intern, visit us at NuWaveMedia.org. If you have ideas for topics or would like to be on the show, email me at digitalsanity@NuWaveMedia.org. Remember this, options control sanity. Woo woo!